Town where the people of Adamidimi used to come to sell their cattle and sheep. Now Cooma's wide awake, by day and night.
For one night only, the town of Cooma is reliving its glory days. The men who worked on the Snowy River scheme are revisiting their former haunts. The Italians have taken over the Australian hotel.
Good on you, mate. We're 18 again today.
Guys, we were young, we were healthy, we were slim, and we had the world at our feet. And when we went to Cooma, we were kings.
Over at the Royal, it's the Croatians and the Slovenians who are reminiscing.
I'm sure if I were to try...
Cooma was the playground for the 100,000 snowy workers who, after weeks of isolation and unforgiving labour, would roll into town with pockets of money.
Out of you.
We had 5 nightclubs. We had the Pescia, the Savoy, the Taboo, the Lido, and the Cortina. And we had jugglers, we had artists, we had singers from all over the world. They come to Cooma. Cooma, you know, King's Cross had nothing on Cooma, because Cooma was the center of Australia in those days.
The physical achievements of the Snowy River scheme can be reeled off in a list of impressive statistics. 16 dams, 7 power stations, 145 kilometres of tunnels, completed on time and under budget. But with the environmental impact of this epic venture now being questioned, perhaps the enduring legacy of the Snowy scheme will be as an example of social engineering. 65,000 migrants came from 40 different countries, grateful for the opportunity to start a new life.
I think the Snowy definitely would have a claim to be the birthplace of multiculturalism in Australia, in that it was the visible stage where multiculturalism was happening. Around the country, of course, you had the Greek cafes and you had Italians going out there, being greengrocers and whatever. But this tended to create stereotypes in the Australian mind, whereas on the Snowy, they were seen as heroes. They were working on this epic project.
Tell them something about those days.
It was a fantastic day, the best time of my life. Eh?
It was a shit
Best
boss
time.
in the tunnel, drilling, you know, 6-7 miles underground.
None of them could speak English, and they didn't know how they were going to get, they were tunnelling through into one of the power stations, how they were going to get in a straight line. So they put a crucifix on the hill over the road, and they said to the fellas, keep it over your left shoulder. And today you go through that tunnel, the cross is still there.
4 Italians, 3 Germans, 2 Yugoslavs and me.
As the scheme was epic in every way, so too the picnic to reunite the workers 50 years later.
4 Aminos, 3 Snapsers, 2 Slivovitz, 1 Stout.
Mary Gazula was the district nurse at Cabramurra. She hasn't seen her friend Georgina Neely, the woman they all called the Duchess, for decades. It was the Duchess's job to entertain royalty when they came to inspect the works.
Why were you called the Duchess?
I'm not quite sure. The men didn't know my other name, and I was always dressed up, so they called me the Duchess. I think that's the reason.
But not all the memories are good.
This is Tony Rugolo, my first cousin. He was here 45 years ago. And then he lost his brother on the shaft, one of the 4 that died on the shaft in Canisnog.
The Snowy scheme exacted a heavy toll on its workers. 121 people died in work-related accidents, and it's unknown just how many more were injured.
I think the real tragedy is that there were specifically avoidable accidents. Young men died needlessly when the large plant they were driving too fast overturned and crushed them, or when they put a drill into a hole that already had unexploded gelignite and it took the face out and killed them. And these were all down to the push for speed.
The philosophy was, keep the goddamn rig rolling. Keep the goddamn rig rolling. That's what's preached at you night and day. Keep the goddamn rig rolling.
We remember young Arthur Costello, who died at the age of 19.
The Irish community is using the 50th anniversary to commemorate their countrymen who died while working on the scheme. Those men who dared question the work regime also paid a price. Paddy Kerrigan was labelled a stirrer because he stood up for his fellow workers.
I was on a blacklist, yes, and couldn't get work anywhere in the mountains or in some of the big construction jobs in Sydney.
It's now been revealed ASIO kept files on militant workers. Siobhan McHugh says intimidation was common.
There's one story where an American actually, and this has been corroborated by a couple of people, he actually dangled a union man 300 metres out over an intake tower in Adaminaby Dam and said if he didn't tell the men to go back to work, he'd drop him.
Stories like this are now part of the Snowy folklore that these men will cherish forever.
A very rich slice of Australian history. Jacinta Tyne.